Good afternoon, councillors. I know you've had a long day and leave the best part to last, obviously. Hopefully this can be a productive conversation and maybe not even take too long. So Nigel and I are here this afternoon to talk to you about the procurement policy review. Nigel's prepared this, and I'm basically a hanger-on, so I'll throw over to him in just a moment. But a couple of sort of things I wanted to outline at the outset, if I may. And they're sort of higher level questions that apply basically for any policy work. So firstly, what would a successful policy look like? So please reflect on that throughout this discussion. What is any problem that you're looking to solve or any opportunity that you're looking to take advantage of? And what are your priorities? And the other side of the coin for that is trade-offs that you're prepared to accept. So that those questions, we'll reflect on those and discuss those throughout the content that Nigel has prepared. But please just keep those in the back of your mind because they're important focusing questions. Oh, I wasn't prepared for that. The transitions. So just in terms of the purpose of this and how Nigel's going to proceed on this. So there is a draft policy that's been amended since it last came to Council. It is certainly not what we consider to be the final version that would go to Council in the next month or two, for example. There's still work that we want to do, and there's content in today's workshop that isn't reflected in that policy, but it's what there is currently at this point in time, and it's a basis for discussion. So what we want to do is discuss that, educate on the current process so that there's perhaps some more clarity around what currently occurs. We've got some views on what may be able to be improved. Obviously, get your feedback. This is, after all, an education and a listening exercise, and ultimately seek your guidance in terms of what you would like to see in that policy that we look to bring to you in the next month or two. I hope that's okay in terms of a scene setter. I'll hand over to Nigel to start taking us through the content proper.
Do you want to click?
Happy to click.
Good man. Excuse me. I'm conscious of my time here at Timaru District Council, just over 2 years now, and this has been hanging around for about 18 months, as alluded to earlier today. I can just explain that time in Timaru District Council or District Council seems to disappear on you before you know it. And Brendan and I have been working on this for quite some time to try and nail down exactly what a local government policy. We've exhausted quite a few avenues of research. We were up at Ashburton a couple of weeks ago going through their process. So it's formed what we've restructured the original or the draft policy that we were operating for a little while last year. But what we're looking for is, and I think the major stumbling blocks we had at the last review some time ago was around what is local and how we would instigate that, how we would communicate that to the local community or the community in general, particularly our stakeholders, our ratepayers. So what we looked at was we're looking at the local value, and we've split this out into local value, public value, and sustainability was another catch cry from the last review, had we built enough into that. And then what we want to do today is also look at the expenditure types. So looking at the value limits for our local value versus our public value, and look at the evaluation models that we utilise in our daily procurement activities here. So those are the overview items. The big question, what is a local supplier? Now, we have exhausted many, many hours of going through trying to get one sentence that encompasses everything. So we have landed on local supplier, meaning a business entity owned and operated with premises within Timaru District Council. So that incorporates all of your franchises, all of your businesses that are local mum and dad stores here. We've got the likes of Henderson Building, those kind of entities, but also encompassing those franchise owners as well. So anybody with a footprint in Timaru District Council will be considered a local supplier.
And to be clear, that's something we want to discuss with you. That's something that we're putting in front of you.
Discussion's about to start. No, you do now. Yeah, go for it, Councillor.
Okay, so I read this and I wasn't even sure what that meant. So a business entity that is owned and operated with a premises in Timaru District. So does that mean it's owned in the Timaru District? And I'm not picking on the supplier, but how do Rooney Group fit into that when the owner doesn't live in the district? So it just failed on the first hurdle for me. And I've just been reflecting quickly in this, and I think, and you've just explained how you've spent hours and hours trying to come up with a sentence. Is that the right approach? Maybe we set a list of things to consider. Mm-hmm. Does the owner live in the district? Do they have a premises in the district? And it might be that you don't meet every single one, but the panel or whoever's making this decision, are they local, can go, well, actually they meet 8 out of 10, so we're happy to say yes. Because I think we're going to just get tied up in knots, and it sounds like you already have, and then I'm sorry, I just went, done work for me.
Would you consider then, in reading this statement here, this sentence, would you consider changing the word "and" to "or"?
I might be able to help here. If we think of Ashburton, for instance, seeing as they're the ones that we spoke to most recently, their approach to local, they have basically they look at particular suppliers and they say, are they considered local according to the following definition? Either they're owned and operated locally, so they're within the Ashburton district, or they might be a national or international franchise, but they have a permanent presence within the Ashburton district and are employing local Ashburton people. So I think that's what Nigel's trying to get at with this sentence, to say that either you're owned and operated locally and or you have a permanent presence. You're not someone who's just there for one particular job and then you're going to leave and lose that value. So I think that's where he's trying to get with that.
I guess, to me, a local business is when the profits land back here, because there's too many national businesses that employ one person. Yes, their wages are paid into the district, but I'm challenged that they're not developing the district, and in fact the profits go overseas in some cases. So I don't want one that it's an international company that's just put someone into Timaru. Yes, they are paying his wages, but they're not enhancing the district in any way.
Are you turning it to me? So my understanding is that all of that nuance is considered through what we're going to show you shortly in terms of the weighted attributes. So if we're looking at a particular complex project where local comes into the situation to a greater extent, then that is part of the overall weighted attributes, and different proposals are considered on that basis, and they're asked to provide information as to what is your return to the local community, how many local subcontractors are you employing, and things like that. And that is more easily demonstrated and measurable. It's with respect not necessarily as nuanced as, not as straightforward as, they have one person locally and therefore we would just say blanketly, yes, they're fine, they're local. I hope that answers your question.
Stupidity. So if you want to buy a lounge suite in here, you've only got one supplier in town then. And that's Milligan's, because Harvey Norman's Australian owned, Big Save's Auckland owned, and Farmers is national. Is that what we're wanting?
You can answer that one.
Yeah, I think in the end, to Councillor Pye's point, if we had those criteria listed out, we'd be there forever trying to figure out what is actually local. So from our point of view, the restriction around local means, and maybe that is the wrong word, it's or, so owned or operated with premises within Timaru District. That covers all of your franchises, all of your national companies, all your international companies. But if they have a footprint here where they're employing local people or they're employing local subcontractors, no, sorry, that's a wrong example. Employing local people in their premises, so Rooney's have a large operation here in Timaru, they qualify as a local supplier.
Could do. I mean, like I say, this is a listening exercise. There are two aspects to this local element. The first one is, what do we consider local to be? The second aspect is, once we're clear on that, how do we factor that into the procurement decision? Because, as we propose in a few slides, local means different things, local is possibly preferenced in different ways depending on the value of the particular project. So perhaps then, seeing as we're having this discussion, I could jump forward a few slides, and Nigel, you might want to talk to the table. We'll come back to this other content because you'll like it, because it's all about business cases. So do you want to talk to this? Because this table shows how local, however we define it, is treated differently depending on expenditure amounts.
Yeah, thanks, Brendan. So in this instance, we've put some expenditure types and values together, just as an indication, more than a set figure. What we're looking at here is the overall procurement strategy and how that reflects local value being pumped back into the community. So a minor spend around that, up to $20,000, should say, would be a closed procurement process. So we'd deal exclusively with local suppliers if that material or service is available within the district. That would be a no-brainer. Be lowest price conforming, local value, and I want to differentiate this through, you'll see the outcome focus there around local value and where it tips over to public value. So we'll move on to moderate, so anything from 20 to 100,000 in this example. We run an open procurement process, and many councils do this where they give a preferential weighting on value or the pricing of 5%. It's never more than that. And in this case, we'd run a short form agreement. Lowest price conforming would probably be the best option, depending on the complexity, of course. And that's where the local value and the public value sits together, because we're looking at the best pricing, but we've given a weighting for local suppliers. Where it gets more interesting is the high level expenditure. In this case, we've exampled at 100,000 plus. We would run an open procurement process, which is pretty much what we do, it is what we do for the projects I'm involved with here at TDC. We have an evaluation criteria which does have and must have a weighted attribute addressing local benefit and broader outcomes. So that covers sustainability, but it also covers what is this contract award, if we were to award it to a particular contractor, how is that going to benefit the local economy?
And if I can just jump in there very quickly, and that's where some of that more nuance, Councillor Payne and Councillor Pye, to what you were discussing before about what is that specific footprint, where are the profits going, etc. That's where that starts to come in, and that's where that's reflected. So local treated slightly differently depending on that amount of expenditure.
And we've transferred that over the outcomes focus to public value, because if we were to add the 5% weighting in the moderate section through to our larger projects, that 5% could be a significant amount of expenditure. So utilising the weighted attributes, giving us the local benefit, gives us the ability to reward ratepayers with the best pricing with the weighted attributes. So we're looking at that tipping scale of saying what is local value and then what is the public value to the ratepayers in not spending money we don't need to.
Yeah. And perhaps this is an opportunity just to tease that out a little bit more if you wish, because to Nigel's point just then, it's a no-brainer that in general we want to invest money within the local economy, but the counterpoint to that is what are the other options that are on the table and what is the overall cost to the ratepayer? At what point does that cost to the ratepayer become more burdensome than the value that gets invested back in the local economy? Again, if I can use Ashburton as an example, and this was public information, so it won't be a problem me saying it, I'm sure, there was a consideration as to whether or not for their library and civic centre, that 5% discount for a local supplier should apply. But that's, if I recall correctly, about a $50 million build. So that's several $1 million. Similar numbers if we're thinking about our theatre and museum project here. So again, we have to, in that sort of situation, think what is the trade-off between that money staying locally to local suppliers versus what is appropriate expense for the ratepayer. And you as elected members are the right people to advise where your comfort level is with that and where that tipping point is. We throw out a few numbers here based on our feel of existing process and what other councils do as a starting point for discussion.
I guess, Brendan, I get totally what you're saying, but the ones we often get challenged on are the big projects that we miss out. They're not worried about the under 20k ones, they can live with that. So I'm just highlighting as council members, the other ones we get challenged on.
I think in the end, excuse me, Councillor Pillington, we were actually we were quite surprised and impressed by the Theatre Royal, the designers. You know, two local companies joined together in JV and were able to beat off the competitors. So realistically, that's what we're looking for. We're not just looking to spend money to improve, we're looking for them to come to us with some alternative strategies to develop the businesses. And that was quite a watershed moment. It was quite impressive to receive those. And alongside that, you know, Structex came in with a really good proposal and really good pricing, and they're part of that project. So I think the local economy, the businesses are starting to understand that this is, we will support if we get the competitive tenders for these large projects. But I don't think from a public point of view, we can award contracts locally if there's a massive cost variation. We'll do what we can. We have it in the weighted attributes. We always have a significant amount of weighted attributes around local value. Right? So the art gallery was one where, you know, Farrell's came in from outside. They employed, the vast majority of their guys were subcontractors. Right? So we have that movement already. It's not necessarily awarding a contract to a local, but it's seeing what benefits that contract signing with an external party from Timaru will actually provide.
And if I can just make one very quick comment to expand on that answer, and I know I'm jumping back a slide, but we'll get to all of them. What we want to do through the policy that we eventually propose to you is put a much greater focus on that last point there around monitoring, evaluation and reporting, because there is you know, understandably a big focus on the one company that gets the big contract, and you know, far less focus on all the subcontracts through that, which are, you know, a large number invariably local. We do feel that if council, all of council, builds in that greater step at the end and is able to provide that transparency to say, you know, of this particular project, this is where X% went and hours worked and da-da-da, and that, you know, this was local and this wasn't, and here are some of the reasons why. If we're able to provide a lot more of that transparency, then that will, I think, address quite a bit of what you're talking about there, Councillor Piddington. So it's both around the initial decision, I suspect, and then also, you know, how did it actually work out throughout the project.
I think also to add to that, thanks Brendan, is with the major projects we've got on at the moment, Theatre Royal and the stadium, we're asking those contractors who are not local to provide information on the spend that they are utilising. So we're asking them to provide reports on that expenditure so we can analyse that, and as part of our post-mortem, or our progress through, but definitely our post-mortem at the end, we'll have those results to say this is how much was actually spent with businesses that are local to Timaru.
I just think it's quite important that you actually know the capabilities of what our local tradies are able to do, and there's certain, I guess there's different categories of different types of trades and scale, I guess, and it's important that you take them along or bring everyone along for the ride in regards to they obviously need to jump through some hoops so they can actually apply for our work, etc. So they not need to be game ready, if you like. And I'd like to think that's something that the council is proactively working on. I guess just looking back at the art gallery, in my mind, there was probably a lack of detail when you went out for the request for interest to do the job. There was there's a whole lot of stuff that wasn't specified. So there's a lot of variation that different trades could say, oh, well, yeah, we can do that. But then it's not that they're going to use a cheap Chinese product rather than perhaps an ornate product, which is what should have been specified and clearly laid out in black and white. So everyone was just not making stuff up, because there was a fair bit of that. And so therefore you would get quite a variation. For instance, someone who is an experienced heritage person would expect to be using quality fittings and fixtures, whereas someone who was just going for the job would be off to the china shop and buying a whole lot of rubbish that we would pay, they would pay bugger all for, but they cut the price down. And of course, then it comes to, oh no, that's not suitable, and then they put the price up. I think a lot of this issues could be, well, a lot of these issues could be headed off if there was a lot more detail included in the requests for information, etc. Would that not be right, Stacey?
I agree, and I think that's what we actually talked about in my standing committee meeting today, is around that approach to a project. And I think that is what, Nigel only gets it when someone wants something. He's not the person that leads it up to the table, I presume. You just get told what to do, that this is what I want, and get out and go and do it. So that project, was probably let down about how we got to the start line. The level of detail was what you're talking about, Mr. Booth. But that's not really the procurement process, that's a project management issue.
I think to both those points, I agree with you. I have one mantra, and I've used it for 40 odd years: bring me the scope and I can do the rest. If there's a problem with the scope, I'm not going to know that, nor are the contractors. We use the GETS process, so we have the Q&A, we have the ability to do addendums to the original documentation for improvements. Sometimes, given the time constraints we might have, we might issue something that isn't quite perfect, but we're waiting for the design to come through or something like that, and we clarify that as we go. But most contractors are already building the skeleton of their proposal before they get the actual detail in some cases. But this is part of the review that Elliot, Brendan and myself have gone through here through Flowingly as well. Great tool to use. But looking at the business case, and I think it alludes to some of the earlier discussions today, around developing that business case, putting it forward for, and you want to talk about the LTP, etc.?
Just tangentially, I mean, I think unless there's a significant objection, the policy that we look to bring to you will incorporate a reflection of this, which is to sort of ramrod indicative and detailed business cases through the entire procurement journey, and it outlines there how council elected members, that is, are involved in that at 4 or 5 touch points. So it, in that sense, makes clear what is expected. Did you want to add anything to that?
I think also if we can compartmentalise the Theatre Royal, for instance, we are managing that process without employing a single contractor to do the whole thing. We're compartmentalising each of the specific specialist activities so we can keep an eye on the quality of the work, the materials they're using, all of those things that we're looking at to deliver a successful project. And I think if I can allude to the sustainability issue that we talked about right at the start, we're not just talking about environmental sustainability, we're talking about keeping the local contractors, local businesses going. Part of that is about education process. So I've had a conversation with quite a number of contractors and specialist industries here in Timaru about how they can improve their process. Bring it forward so they are competing. It's not just, hey, it's me, you know me, give us the work. It doesn't work like that. In some instances of the larger projects, you're competing against national companies. So you have to bring your game.
And I've seen Nigel's slides that he presented to, I think it was the Chamber of Commerce, for exactly that point, Councillor Booth, to make sure that our local suppliers, are able to be set up for success. And I know that Nigel's ready to go out on the road. He's happy to give away his evenings to talk to all manner of companies, I'm sure. There you go.
Righty, Michelle. Jump in.
I'm sorry to labour this point, but it has been the one that has been the most contentious. Going back, are we trying to define the wrong thing and trying to define what a local supplier is when we should perhaps use the terminology local benefit and define that instead? Just throwing it out there.
Well, we checked then if you go to the slide.
The definition, or which
No,
one?
keep going forward. It's the weighted attributes.
Just as a very quick response to that, whilst Nigel finds the right one. My question to the collective group would be, what benefit are you seeking here? What's the problem you're trying to solve? If you are trying to basically keep money locally, how would you know that that has occurred? And if that is through, the post-mortem where, X% is retained locally, or if you think that basically by giving money to by giving a project to a local firm, that's basically your proxy, the money is definitely going to stay local even though we know that it's not, how are we going to know if we're succeeding? So that's something that we would seek your collective guidance on. So, sorry, Nigel, just to jump in there. Sorry to answer a question with a question, but there's nuance there.
He does that a lot.
I mean, you can apply a multiplier to that money, can't you? So there's ways to analyse that. Just going back, one of my concerns, actually, I know we focus on the big projects, but I've always been concerned about anything under 20k where you've got delegated authority and someone can use a preferred supplier, and the checks and balances also around, are we using the same preferred supplier over and over again, and that probably slightly out of procurement. It's probably more around the auditing of the process, but that's the concern that I have, because that can cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars over a short time within a budget. And the problem too is that delegated authority is often quite low. So is it got to, are we going within this process a step up to get sign off those sorts of things to protect that under 20k? Because you could just within certain budgets within our organisation have one supplier, if there's no protection, get oodles, and then you've got questionable process, I would have thought.
I think part of my mandate, Mayor Nigel, is that I track all of the expenditure, not just the big project stuff and not stuff that I'm involved with, but looking at the reporting structure and determining exactly where we've got spend. I know I harp on about lowest price conforming, which is a wonderful thing, but I'd rather it was the other way around. It was conforming and then lowest price, because you're right. In some instances, we are awarding work and it's been put on the back burner and it's eventually done at some point down the track when they've got time available. We need to change that philosophy so that we're looking at each project as a spend and looking at what are we making the right decisions about that. And that's part of my remit.
And then probably this is one out of Michelle's bank, but it's how you deal with variation within a contract under your procurement settings, and some of those water projects were good examples of actually you've awarded X, but it's ended up being 20 or 30% of variation. Yes, you might have a set contracted rate that variation is based on, but then it's coming back. Yeah.
We did that audit on procurement and actually missed that point, because if you look at those examples in there, those variations were up around 80%, and there was not a comment about it. And that's something we've got to get much, much better at. And that just showed to me that we'd put out to the market something that was not fully scoped. There was huge variation.
It's always been my concern around delegations within budgets and contracts that can just, and that this is why I, concerned years ago around parks. No wonder Court employed 4 builders, because, they were a preferred supplier and they were happy. I would imagine.
Yes, to clarify it, I'm a team of one, so I can only get around so many projects all at one time. So I'm trying to develop an internal process. So, and the cornerstone of that is the policy and the procurement manual I'm working on at the moment, which seems to drift and change with each day. But the reality is we need that structure in place so that we have a template for activities based on the value, the potential value of those projects, and we can follow the same process so we can be transparent all the way through. And that post-mortem will give the ability to be able to report to council exactly what did happen. And the variation process is an integral part of any contract, but we need to be managing it a lot better. So we have a contingency budget available. Part of that is a contingency for variations, but we don't want to delve into that. And I think at the moment, particularly with the theatre and to a certain extent the stadium, we are holding back. We are arguing every single attempt at a variation in order that we don't go over that. We need to keep it within the budget. We're aware of that. And if we do get justifiable variation, we dug something up, we didn't know it was there, we're pulling back on other aspects of those projects. So we're continuing to maintain that balance on the budget.
Just going to your team of one comment, why would a procurement lead be even involved? Why are you, once it's procured and a contract's in place, why don't you just move away? Why do you continue to get involved? I've never heard of a procurement lead ever being part of projects after it's handed over. You've done your job, so I'm struggling to understand.
Let's call it youthful enthusiasm.
Well,
but at the moment,
stop being like that then, because it's taken 18 months to get this done, so I'm thinking.
Agreed. With the stadium, we have a design and build contract, so that's done and dusted.
Yeah, so
there are a few variations around or not variations, I shouldn't say that. There are additional pieces of work around the drainage and sewage, etc. But the majority of that project will be design and build, and it's done. The theatre, because we're compartmentalising each of the activities as specialist disciplines, because we need that structure in place that we deliver something that is fit for purpose, we compartmentalised all of those specialist disciplines. Currently we're running at the moment 10 contracts for that, and we have a number still to go, particularly the construction contract.
Yeah, but again, I'm going back to my point, that's not your role. Is it?
My role is to manage the procurement of each of those services.
Once it's done, you walk away.
Unless there are variations to it, indeed I am, yeah.
Why would you be part of a variation to a contract?
Because I need to discuss and analyse exactly what the variation is for and look at the costings.
Isn't that the project manager's job? Because honestly, I work in a far larger organisation like this than this, and the procurement is one step, and then I never talk to the guy again.
I think your point is valid. The reality of this project at the moment is that we have lost a significant portion of our resource. So currently at the moment we have Dave Hook covering both projects for the time being, because we lost Matt Sisson. We've lost our coordinator, our stakeholder liaison. So currently at this point, we have a part-time and Dave, because he's doing both projects, Paul Haggarth and myself running these contracts.
Off track, I'll just leave it.
Probably are.
Yeah.
Sorry, and it's probably a wee bit off track for procurement, but I'm concerned where we procure it, give it someone, that there should be a level, if you go over 25% of the original amount, it should go to someone else. So how do we end up with getting 80% over the cost? Sorry? Yeah, but that's my concern. It's great if you've got a steering group.
And so,
Yeah, no, because what do I say? When it's government or local government, people rub their hands saying, well, that's where we're going to start, but where are we going to finish? Yeah.
One of the things that was successful previously when Lily's role over program delivery, I think she had a good insight. Andrew, you might be able to talk to this a little bit, but over the projects in depth, and I'm hoping that that new program delivery will probably be the opportunity to maybe delve into this.
Yep.
Can I just go back to the procurement process overview and just to follow up on a comment the Mayor made? And so minor, up to 20,000, which I have another question about, but that's not my first question. Should there be an annual limit there? So, to Mayor Bowen's point, it's under 20,000, but you've got your preferred supplier and you just keep using them and you never go out and test the market. So should it be that on per transaction it might be 20,000, but when that supplier hits 200,000, for example, in a year, that has to go out and get repriced or something to make sure that they're still competitive, making figures up there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so we should have annual bans as well. Then my other point is, because careful what I say here, I thought these bans were quite low in some respects. So what happens if a panel, operating a water pump blows up and it's 50 grand to replace? You're not waiting for a procurement process while your water's not working to replace it. Is there an emergency one?
So we do have that slide here with the basically minor to moderate in the left-hand column there, lowest price conforming, weighted attributes for the larger complex works, high risk, high value, and the exceptions are authorised deviations, declared emergencies. So it would be some distinct issue that is blown up now. We need somebody, get somebody there straight away. So
an authorised deviation?
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Cool.
that would be within the delegations as required.
And it will be an operating expense, so it will be an OPEX rather
absolutely.
than CAPEX.
Yep.
That's just for CAPEX?
So, no, what you're talking about, if something blew up, like that's part of an operational, there'll be something.
It could be CapEx. So effectively, if you think about it, outside of your contract for your waste management, your contract for city care, and there's probably another couple contracts, there wouldn't be many contracts over 200,000. Your stationary contract wouldn't even hit that.
I hope not.
Your and then everything else that is CapEx should be treated as a single CapEx item, and each of those should have some sort of procurement process. For CapEx, you shouldn't just be going to your preferred supplier. You shouldn't, because it's CapEx.
And you should have preferred contractors with service agreements,
right,
at every level.
That's right.
So that
So even
that's
painting,
held for so many years, and then it's reviewed.
we know painting, it doesn't hit anywhere near 200,000. We should have a preferred painter. You're it. Our electricians, they don't get anywhere near 2,000. You're our preferred electrician for that period of time. Yep. Plumbing's the same. And that's what we learnt that while we were trying to look at whether we bring it in-house. And some of the spend was so low, it's just not worth bringing in-house. But you should nail down your preferred person. And those preferred ones, if a lot of those trades, they use it as their filler for their wet days or whatever. They know there's something going on at the council.
So just one other question on that overview slide. That's clearly what you're proposing going forward, not what happens now, because it's another area of frustration at tenders and procurement is why is this one, the weighted attributes, and why is this one lowest price conforming, and it's always very unclear why we've used one process over the other, or unclear to me, probably perfectly clear to the council officers.
So what we did with this slide is we put in the arbitrary figures there on the value, but each procurement that comes through should be assessed on those merits. To say that this is a complex project, it might be under the 100,000, but it might be a complex project. We need to be able to establish a business case for that expenditure, and then a procurement plan is attached to that, and then we follow that plan. From the point of view of the services, for instance, we would look not so much a panel system, but more a labour, equipment, materials contracts I've used in the past, where we're approving somebody for a period of time that gives them the ability to compete with local businesses, probably, around being able to provide that service for a period of time. It gives them surety that they get the work, and it gives companies that didn't get it surety that they don't chase business with the council for a while, and they sharpen their pencil for next time or whatever.
You're right, Michelle. We have quite a few lowest price conforming over 100,000. And I just wonder, you know, for those particular ones where there's some analysis should be happening, which I don't think it is, how many variations do they have? Because there should be none.
Yeah, I guess what's not been clear to me at tenders and procurement is why, it would be quite nice just to kind of have an explanation of why this process has been chosen. Here's the policy, this is exactly fits with the policy, or it doesn't, but this is why we've chosen it, because sometimes that's been an area of frustration too.
What we're trying to do today, and hopefully in the very near future, is just nail down that policy so that we can then say, this is what the rules are. This is the procurement manual will augment that and encompass a lot of the current activity and some improvements in that activity, but looking at the entirety of the transparency of it. And that'll load into the finance system as well, being able to present reporting on budgets that is accurate and dynamic.
We actually, so when a project's completed and it's analysed, is it come in on budget or is it blown out? Does that occur on all our contracts that we let out, or is there a report that they receive to say, well, this one actually ended up being 20% over due to this? Do you have a summary at the end that you know what's going on?
Currently, we don't do that, and I haven't been involved in any of those at this point, which is why we're trying to improve the process, put it into the policy so we have that as a standard practice. We have contract completion documentation, which is fine, so the work is done and we now put our defects liability in place. But the reality is we don't do our reporting on success on these projects as well as I would have imagined.
But that's one of the important things, isn't it? You just keep giving them out unless you actually measure, yeah, it's great, it's completed, but every time these guys are 30% over. Is it our fault, their fault? What did we get wrong?
That's the report that's on the action list.
I know it is on the action list, but we haven't seen one yet, so we're obviously not doing anything in council at the moment.
To augment that, Councillor Piddington, what we've got here is the existing principles for government procurement are the blue ones. So these are the mandatory guidelines from government procurement. What we've added here is a sixth one, which is around probity, measuring and reporting on projects as they go forward and at the completion, so we then increase the confidence of both the council and ratepayers that we are spending the money appropriately and we are managing those variations where we can. We make decisions about, you know, did we dig something up and oh my God, it's not what we thought, we now need to do some more work on that. That's a variation. If we're looking at Chinese augmentation or a specialist in Invercargill or something, we make those evaluations as we go. But if there's a significant percentage increase and we have time available, we will make it known and we'll get approval for that. That's the way procurement works.
Sorry, to be fair to the council officers, we used to get some reports like the Parry or a water pipeline. We would get a regular report on where they're up and that, but there just seemed to be a disconnect by what we were approving at tenders and procurement and then what we'd see after that. Yeah.
The reports you're getting and what you're needing are vastly different.
So the outcome should be considered when we're considering the lowest tender. And if the lowest tender is consistently going over by 20%, and we keep giving it to them based on price, we're doing something seriously wrong.
Say that at every tender and procurement meeting, don't we?
No, I actually think you've got to back the bus up even further. You've got to look at what scope did we put out and what did we actually do. Did the scope creep, or was the scope that we originally put out wrong? And that's where it all starts.
It's pretty common all the way across the board is that we're not putting enough information out. So, and we're not doing our homework, so we know pretty much exactly what's going to be happening. And that's why we're having so many cock-ups with our projects.
But that's Nigel Houth's point, isn't it? Spend the time up front, doing the scope, get it right, and then you're going to save time likely across the length of the project. One of our problems, though, is we make a decision and we twiddle our thumbs and then we rush the scope. And we're not using all that time correctly, and so it's to put a timeline in place from the decision, but that's learning for all of us, officers and governance, I think.
Nigel, go back to that slide for a minute. Sometimes I'm challenged, and just looking for an explanation, more than others, yeah, most days. The be fair to all suppliers. You know, occasionally I get accused, council use this guy all the time, and we're here and we don't get a crack at it. How does that work? It might be outside procurement, it might be within a unit, but are they reviewing those people every 2 years? How do I know to get into the pot, to be pulled out? How can we do that better?
By making sure you're selecting a preferred supplier for your OPEX up to a certain level, and then for your CapEx, making sure they're treated differently. I think we mix the two.
And when that needs to be also reviewed outside of the group that's working with those people all the time, because it's easier to be happy with the supplier that you're ringing in constant contact with. It has to go somewhere else and be cross-checked, and yeah.
I can support that. Honestly, I know I'm terrible at it too in my own work. That you get so used to someone who knows your business, knows exactly where you're talking about. It's just so easy just to ring up. I'm terrible at it. I've got 10 people that are hot on my phone. When something goes wrong, it's just so easy to ring them. They know where it is, what I need. So I understand the challenges that officers have when it comes to a preferred, someone that's doing a good job. If they go over, they get the chop, but we're not doing. Yeah, we might be forgetting that bit.
Is now a good opportunity to run through the last few slides, which I believe is Nigel just talking a bit more about the process, some of those weighted attributes, and an example? So,
yeah, just a small example I used at the Chamber of Commerce a while ago is just looking at the evaluation process.
Oh, shit.
Right. Next.
You've got a lot of clicks here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I like PowerPoint. Okay, so this is basically the criteria when we're looking at scoring. So we have at least 3 evaluators. If it's a complex, large value project, we may include a 4th, and that's generally somebody completely external from council. Looking at the rating scores, we score a 0 to a 10 for each of those attributes, up to a value of 100% of those attributes. So we're looking at the scores, we then average those out, and then we give them a score against that weighting percentage. The percentages can vary in each of the evaluation criteria based on the requirements, the complexities, etc. But generally speaking, we will load in the local resources every single time. And we also look at the broader outcomes in the vast majority of cases. So we're already leaning towards the benefits of the region in both of those criteria. Methodology, skills, track record and capability is the balance of it. And if there's something really outside the box, we would slide that in as an addition. But generally speaking, we'd like to keep them all into those categories.
And just a reminder, this is what we propose kicks in with that 100,000 plus.
I think I've already alluded to this, but that track record is interesting because, yes, similar or relevant completed projects successfully delivered, but what's their track record with us in sticking to a tendered price and a budget and all of those things? An answer, I'm just making a point.
One of the additions to that track record, we're working with our health and safety team to develop a process where we're recording contractor incidents. So part of our evaluation process is looking at last year's LTIs, that type of thing. So we're looking at how their work is carried out and how that affects their staff. And also, hopefully not the public, but definitely have those recorded.
Nigel, would there be any issue in adding what Councillor Pye said about that track record into that? Like, comparison to previous, it talks about examples of similar or relevant completed projects successfully delivered, but I think that needs to be in there as cost or variation. Have they managed to stay within budget?
The tricky thing is that variation based on something we didn't
No, but that's
deliver.
that's what you would evaluate. In that time, you'd go, actually, it wasn't their fault, there was all these issues, but you've acknowledged it. Where if it's not, you'd go, nah, we had such a bad experience with them, it's happened 3 times now, so that would get a different weighting.
And just to clarify, so that would be, if I'm hearing you correctly, under that track record, so there'd be a third point there just to reflect sort of their TDC history so that we...
Things that can be explained, if it's out of their... Control, absolutely. That would get a comment or whatever in your...
This slide needed to be summarised quite a bit. So there's an awful lot more under this than just these points. It's more just to fit it all onto the one slide. But part of the process is the evaluation criteria can be quite lengthy.
Just reflecting on this slide in general, I think we're interested to, number one, just make you aware, if you're not already, that these are sort of industry standard criteria for weighted attributes. But we're interested to know if there's anything else that you think should be on there, high level content criteria, anything you might have been expecting to see that isn't on there. So just open floor on that, I suppose.
Okay, so looking at trusting the process, which is a requirement that councillors need to adhere to, is and we need to present something that is trustworthy. So looking at the lowest price conforming, some of the activities there around those decisions are the simple works, low value, low risk. It's already a competitive market, and there's not much scope for public benefit. It just is a small amount of work. Weighted attributes, we will always lock that in for complex, high-value work with multiple criteria. So when we're delivering complex projects, we need to be able to evaluate every single complex portion of that project. And we need to make balanced decisions around that. So we need to be able to prove that we've gone through a robust and transparent process. We certainly deliver a lot more information out into the public arena than I'm used to in the commercial sector, that's for sure, on the success and lack of success on particular RFPs or RFTs. And that took a bit of getting used to, but that's fine. The only exceptions to that is NZTA procurement, all of government contracts, if we're in any declared emergencies, and anything the CE signs off or persons of delegated authority with those values. But that comes with a requirement to specify and detail exactly why that deviation is occurring.
And that links to the delegations under the delegations manual and perhaps circles back to the point that Mayor Bowen was speaking to before, so an opportunity to reflect on that if you wish.
With this one, you'll laugh, my comment was we don't, that's the problem. I didn't trust the process. But that's a lack of understanding, or on my part being confused about, the different types of tendering and things like that. However, one of the other issues has been in the weighted attributes and how you put a panel together to assess the tenders. And are you recommending any changes to that process on who should be on those panels? Because that's been another area of contention in the Tenders and Procurements Committee at times, not always.
So the direction around the three evaluators is to have two subject matter experts. Generally, it'll be either the contract or the project director and the project manager, and somebody completely outside of that. So reviewing the information as a vanilla evaluator to suggest areas where they might see some idiosyncrasies that they identify, but if you're too close to the fire, you can't feel the heat. So we have that independent. And if we have a large complex project, we would include an external review of that information as well. And we have the QSs involved in that process as well.
So that's good to understand. I guess my question then is the total random person obviously needs some skills and attributes. You're not just going to pick a person off the street. Obviously not,
Nope.
But do you know what I mean?
I give them an awful lot of preemptive information and discussion around the methodology, and you'd be surprised the number of volunteers I have coming out of the woodwork wanting to contribute to that process. Definitely, we just don't pick anybody at random. We have people that are, of a certain level, and except Brendan.
I was about to say thank you very much for confirming that I am of a certain level, whatever that level is.
You did one.
To your point, Councillor Pai, a couple of councils that we're aware of, if there are particularly sensitive, complex or public interest, sort of any measure, combination of that, projects, they have been known to appoint a council observer to the process, not to be involved with doing the scoring themselves, because there is issue there in terms of the governance versus operational interface, but just in terms of being involved on the inside of the process so that they can have their degree of assurance exactly that it's been done correctly and can report that back to their fellow councillors. And what we heard through a couple of the councils that do that on certain projects, they cherry pick, it's case by case, is that those councillors normally ended up being advocates to the other councillors to say, hey, look, this one is okay, I've been on the inside of this and it looks pretty good and da-da-da. So I think it goes back to that other point, as the slide says, about trusting the process. And a key part of that is transparency and also just understanding the education as to what's going on, so that you as councillors can see how did we start with X and get to Y and what was in the middle. Yeah.
I think also the length of time it's taken us to get back here to review the policy itself is reflective of not just a document change, but it's a psychology change. It's a philosophy that needed to improve, and it is on the improve, and we'll deliver this with probity that can be investigated and transparent and available with dynamic, particularly financial information, but also success criteria for the project.
I think Boothie's going to be out of a job soon, so we might use him as our independent council observer.
Independent reviewer?
I think the seniority of the panel. I think the seniority of the panels need to reflect the project. Like we've got Claremont just coming up, that tender's closing. that should be a very senior panel, because that's a $36 million project. So I'm not sure when they're choosing who's on that or not, and even when it closes, but it's very soon.
That should be at the highest level, shouldn't it? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, we feel like we're coming towards the end, you may be pleased to know, so we'll just...
Nobody knows what the end is.
The conversation has jumped around. It's a dynamic conversation. That means it's good. Do you want to talk to that very briefly, Nigel?
Okay, so Elliot, myself and Brendan have reviewed this plan, if you like, the flowingly, and Sam, yeah, absolutely. So looking at this, from this point of view, looking at the business case up front, and then is it justified? If it is, can we move on to the long-term plan or the annual plan? If that's justified, then we put a detailed business case together, which will include a procurement strategy. So nothing moves forward from there until there's a strategy attached to that. And then from that, we move forward to, are we going to agree that? Yes, we are. We're going to go ahead with this project. So implementation through to completion and monitoring, evaluating and reporting. Okay, so the council review will start definitely at this council decision at the start, the blue arrow, and then definitely we'll be reviewing that as part of the purple arrow review of that contract. The others are either tenders and procurement or council meetings, I guess, and it's...
Just depends on the delegations that have been
correct,
made.
Yeah.
For me, just three very brief things about this, and I'm probably going to forget the third by the time I get to it. The first thing is that it creates a robust framework for decision making, which I think even today we've heard councillors crying out for. The second thing is it aligns what we do quite nicely with our legal obligations and requirements under the Local Government Act. And the third thing is what I alluded to earlier around ensuring that we've got a key focus, not just on doing something, but being able to report back at the end of that and have that transparency, both to give you assurance and then also to be able to give that information to the community. Did you get out of it what you intended to? Which is possibly a good segue if there are no other questions I'd like to what I said at the beginning of the workshop around, those questions. What does a successful policy look like? What's the problem or opportunity that you're looking to solve or leverage and things like that. So if there are any thoughts or questions or comments on that, now would be a great time to discuss that. Otherwise, we can head towards a close, I suppose.
Yeah.
So are we going to talk about the policy though? Because I've got some questions in here, or am I the only person that's probably...
Please, by all means, happy to raise that, and I just note the caveat that I mentioned, I think, at the outset, or maybe I forgot, which is what's there is sort of a point in time. It's, there's stuff that we've discussed today that we would look to put into the policy that isn't in there yet, so happy to take all questions, comments, and incorporate that in, please.
Certain dollar amount that once you get over that you actually you would employ a project manager to oversee the entire procurement process and design and delivery, instead of giving those jobs to inexperienced people who really, it's a one in a lifetime thing that potentially they might do, and it's generally someone that doesn't know what they're doing, and so should that not be someone...
That's a bigger subject than the procurement policy meeting, I think.
Yeah, I know, but if you look at some of our projects, it's probably been the main issue that we've not identified the inability or we haven't got that capacity within our own team. So therefore, if you haven't got that, you simply reach out and you get a suitably qualified person who is experienced and to deliver that project and within a budget, and they oversee the whole shebang because they know what they're doing.
I don't tend to agree with that entire statement, because look at how well we're delivering road, water, rubbish, all of that. I think it's just out of the box projects that we talked about Strathallan Corner and nothing to do with staff, but how we could have done that better. Theatre's massive, the stadium's massive, but we're we're getting the right people in the right places. I feel we've improved a lot, actually, in the last 12 to 18 months in that space. So I would have thought all the projects that are happening now are actually being delivered well by project managers like your land,
I wasn't
water.
talking about the local, I was talking about those big projects.
Yeah, I think
That's
we've
what we've
really
done. We've employed team projects to do the theatre and the stadium. Exactly what we've done.
In this particular instance, this point in time, we're doing everything all at once, and it is dragging on a lot of resources who've got their own BAU to get on with as well, but we are
That's
delivering.
not to say, councillor Booth, there needs to be a lot of improvement in land transport. You look at those financials, there's a heap of projects didn't get done, so therefore it's got to get planned better. Water's the same. We've got about 3 down there that need some help and education on how to run a project. So you're right in a lot of ways, but and to be honest, the amount of project people got in the place, we should have had the capability to do those 2 big projects.
I sort of agree with you, Councillor Scott, but to your point, there's a lot of what we don't know, and as governors we're making some assumption across what is infrastructure, and that's the way it's, and yeah, we just need to get better at that as governors as well as demanding different information.
Given the procurement lead role didn't exist till I got here, my focus is about changing that psychology and process attached to that to ensure that we are delivering accurate information on major projects and the smaller ones as well. But reality is we need to get better at this, and we are improving things as we go.
This policy sits alongside a procurement manual. How is that coming along?
Well, if I can throw a rope around it, it doesn't keep changing. That is probably it's still probably about 60% complete, but it has a lot of merit with the new changes, with the restructure, and also the way we're managing these projects. We need to improve that for sure.
Yeah. I think that's sort of going to be your Bible. So I feel like that's such a fundamental document or manual to help support the business. So,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Any other question?
Question I sort of had, but it's a bit tiring for tonight, but it was in this policy 20, and we talked about local supplier, but when we talk about geographical area too, we say supplier based in Canterbury, South Island or New Zealand, and I can remember that's what got us talking on the art gallery. But when we go down to the next one too, it says supplier hires local or supports workforce development in the region. What does region mean? Is it district or is it region? Because region, is that, I don't know what that means. I know what it means in my world, but what does it mean in yours?
And that wording there, it's all under that heading to consider. So I think that's some of the discussion that we've had today around, are we trying to prioritise the Timaru district? Are we looking further afield and the like? So just, it's all placeholder words, different options to as a basis of discussion. Sorry.
So your region and your work will be the South Island. The region of my work right at the moment is Canterbury.
Yeah.
This is This is the challenge, though, because we kept asking that, and we're told that that would only get down to Canterbury, where that's absolute a load of bollocks. So there's local and there's local, isn't there? So yeah.
I want to put that on there, Nigel, and say local is local.
Slightly controversial, but I think we did undertake, when we were reviewing our procurement policy, to consider the public forum item that came here a month ago. And I just remind you of that. I'm not advocating for or against it, I'm just reminding you.
No, absolutely, it's on the list, and we can discuss it here if we wish. My understanding was that it was not something that council wished to see in the final policy, but correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, sorry, I was away for that, and I've just had a follow-up email last week that I do have to go back to them. So what was there any talk? Because we don't deal with any of those companies anyway, do we? What was
My
the
recollection
conversation?
of the day was there was no appetite to do anything at that particular time, but the reviewing of our procurement policy would be an appropriate time to look at that.
Ah, okay, and they got that feedback, okay. Or,
That was my recollection.
Yeah, and I think from the point of view
Okay.
of being able to ring fence a policy and incorporate some of the discussion items we've had today, we then would be able to present something for the local appetite for review and discussion again, and then form a robust policy that not only elected members and ratepayers, but also the council officers can rely on as basically the review or the document to rule.
I would be reluctant to be specific about certain countries, entities, relationships, whatever, and more refer back to social benefit or something that's wider, something that's broader and more dynamic, because we know how the world changes.
That's the broader outcome process and part of the evaluation process. That's exactly what it's for.
Yeah, and we've certainly got some information around that public forum item that we'll incorporate into the report when this comes up. Our intention, possibly just as closing remarks, because I think I get the sense there are no more questions, but cut me off if I'm wrong. Our intention is certainly to take the information that we've received today, frame this all up, and probably the September council meeting is too soon because the reports are due by this Friday, but the October council meeting, the 7th of October, is the one that we would look to get this policy to you, unless there are any. I appreciate that that's just before the election. I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. Okay. It's been a long day, I suppose. So, yeah, just to note that we are certainly aiming to get this to you for that 7th of October meeting, and we will provide opportunities in the interim for you to be able to feed back into anything that comes up as a result of today. There's certainly a few action points for us to go out and look at and, frame up a couple of different options or wording, for example, around local versus local benefit and da-da-da. So we will advise you of how to input into that so that once we get that 7th of October meeting, hopefully it's relatively plain sailing and we can put this to bed.
Just pardon my naivety with local government, is it possible that when we update it, we can actually issue it prior to that requirement for the October meeting to elected members? Can we do that?
You mean in the agenda?
No, I mean just emailing it to you guys for feedback before we have to make everything into the council papers. Is that an option?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's cool.
There's no decision making there. It's simply this is where we're at based on the guidance you've provided us at the workshop. Yeah. And there's certainly precedent with councillors being involved in other policies, like Councillor Piddington with the long name policy, attending some of our meetings and being involved at the pointy end of that. So yeah. Yep.
Thank you, guys. I know this is like pulling teeth sometimes, I want to acknowledge your role too, Nigel, and you are a team of one and it's tricky, but I think we're getting there. I think you're right, we just need to put this to bed and stop going, we've been talking about this for 2 years or whatever. So